Welcome everyone to the PJ's Cast. I'm your host Pierce, alongside of my good pal Dylan. To quote the band Stained, it's been a while. We're finally back. It's been almost a month since we recorded a regular podcast, I believe. When we did our last podcast, you and I, Blackhawks were 1-1-1. Last week recorded a podcast with Steve Dangle. Definitely should check it out. Always a great time with Steve. I can't believe it had been 4 years from the last time I interviewed him, and it's always, I feel the perception of Steve is like, oh, screamy, yelly Leafs fan, but he's genuinely a great guy, a cool guy with a lot of cool experiences. So definitely check that out. So yeah, we got a month worth of hockey to talk about, Blackhawks hockey and just the NHL in general. I don't know if you share this sentiment, but I feel like the Blackhawks should have a better record than 6-9-1. Like, you could very much make the argument that they should be over 500 or even better than Bettman 500. So what have your thoughts been on the Blackhawks so far? Because, you can pick apart things here and there, some of the lineup decisions that Luke Richardson has made, and, pick apart, some of the players. But all in all, I think there's been a lot of good news and a lot of positive things to talk about with this team.
Yeah. For starters, I think I've been a pretty big, I was like, this is a big nut up or shut up year for Richardson. I said multiple times. Like I said, a couple lineup decisions that do make my head scratch still, but you cannot deny the fact that he's making this team play hard every single night.
They're way better defensively.
They have
a lot more structure,
100%, and the analytics back it up too.
They're like middle of the pack. Like, they're in the teens, I think, in terms of like advanced stuff, like expected goals against per 60, stuff like that.
Yeah, those like streaks where they let up high danger chances are happening fewer and fewer, which is good. And I wanted to look up a statistic because I think it's going to depict just kind of where this team is at right now. Because, like,
I wonder if it's the one I'm thinking of, because I remember, I think it's from the article that Scott Powers did or Mark Lazarus. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure every game they've played this season, except for one, the game against Vancouver, which to me still so far is the only game where like they just didn't have from the start. I feel like every game they've been in and could have won, and that's why I think they could be above 500 right now. But I think the stat is like they've either like have been up, they've been winning, they've either been tied or like down by one goal heading into the third period every game of the season except for that Vancouver game. And yeah, there's a couple other games where like that Nashville game they should have won, man. Up 2-0, could have been up 3-0. Goal got called back, and then Nashville just storms right back and wins it. That game against San Jose, where they are up 2-1, but just could not generate anything more than that. And I think it's clear, like we talked about their defense being better. I mean, the goaltending has been great this year. It's just simple enough. They don't have enough offense, and it's funny enough because I think they've gotten good enough depth goal scoring. Like Ryan Donato went on a heater for a couple weeks there. Craig Smith has gotten more offense than I thought he was going to produce. To me, like they just haven't got enough other top end, whether that's Connor Bedard going on a very low shooting percentage. It's simple. They don't have enough offense, but then like they were down 2-0 to LA. They looked so out of it. I didn't even think they were going to be back. I remember working late that day and just being like, oh, they're losing. And then I come home pleasantly surprised that they actually like tied the game and won in a shootout. So those two games on the road against LA and Anaheim were so huge to cap off like what could have been a bad road trip, but the process looks good. And then them beating Minnesota 2-1 in overtime was also satisfying because I mean there's a long list of teams that I've had the Blackhawks number over the past few years on account of the Blackhawks sucking, unless you're the Maple Leafs. And like to me, LA and Minnesota were at the top of that list, so just beating them is just so like satisfying. But yeah, enough about me blabbering. I want you to go back to your point.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of say that wasn't the stat I was going to bring up, if I'm being 100% honest.
Hear your stat.
Because like I'm going to be 100% honest. There's a couple of guys who are going to see some positive regression in terms of shooting percentage, starting with Connor Bedard, who's shooting at a whopping 5% right now. That's not going to stay at 5%.
No.
I would like them to put Teravainen back on his wing because I think that's
Yeah.
when he's created the most offense. Although I do
Mhm.
really like Teravainen, Dickinson, Anderson. Like, how many
Yeah.
times did I say Dickinson and Anderson should be the shutdown unit? And then, they just kind of left him on the bench for a month and he comes back and, he's
Shut down
unlocked.
Kaprizov mostly. At least at worst, kept them in check for that whole game.
Yep. It's a great shutdown line. There's guys that are having better offense or better seasons offensively than I think they're getting credit for. One of which is, obviously Ryan Donato has been the story of like just someone who's taken a step. I think two defensemen that aren't getting enough credit is Seth Jones and Connor Murphy. Both of them are generating more offense than they usually do. Murphy has now got 7 points in 16 games. Seth Jones has 10 in 16. He had the game winning assist on the overtime winner. When Seth Jones isn't doing the stupid stuff that he does about 15% of the game, he's a fantastic defenseman. There's just those little lapses that he always has that, what people will remember more than the good he does. But it also doesn't help that he doesn't have chemistry with Connor Bedard at all. Don't even get me started on that. But it's pathetic that the two best players on the team cannot fucking figure it out together. But that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Lucas Reichel been a pleasant surprise this year. I hope they put him back in a fourth line situation with Smith. I think that's where he suits better.
And
Smith
Patrick
and Maroon.
Maroon. That's so crazy that that's worked out. I never in a million years thought that would be what unlocks and taps into Lucas Reichel's potential.
But this is where they play good defense. I'm just looking at the roster right now, and you take a gander at it, and you just see that the fifth leading scorer is Connor Murphy, and you're just not going to win hockey games that way.
No.
Guys like Lucas Reichel, guys like Taylor Hall, guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, Philip Kershaw has 4 points in 15 games. There's a reason he's a minus 11. There's a reason Richardson sat him. I wasn't happy with it at the time, but someone has to step it up or something has to get done to get the middle six going. And I mean, we all know the answer that probably should be, but it won't be. And that's
at least not right now. Maybe another month away.
I hope so, because Frank Nazar could fix a lot of problems with this middle six right now, I feel like. And, this is a team that just needs to they need to find scoring where they need it, and they need Bedard to get off the schneid. And I think then and that's the crazy part. They have all these issues, and they're still competitive 85% of most nights, which is more than you could say the last two seasons. Like you said, they beat the Wild and the Kings, two teams that have given them headaches over the last 4 years. That was the first time they've beaten the Wild since COVID. Think about that.
Literally, there's no hyperbole there. That's crazy.
Last time they beat the Wild, Patrick Kane got a hat trick against them, I'm pretty sure, in 2020.
Oh, my Lord.
It was a long time ago. I think it was a game he and Saad were about to have dueling hat tricks, and Saad passed it off to Kane for a hat trick. I know the game that it was, but the Wild had won at least their last 10 against them. And that was a game that I felt like the Hawks had in control a very good amount of that game. It also helps that Peter Mrazek's back in midseason form, because obviously there was a little bit of and another guy who has done fantastic, and we gave him so much smack last year, rightfully so, but Arvid Soderblom has been downright tremendous this year and should have been one of the two teams to beat Winnipeg if that team could have just figured out how to close a game out.
Should have got a shutout, man.
Here's the thing. I want to say it's a young team, but it's not. It's a team full of veterans. So the fact that they don't know how to close out a hockey game with the lead is concerning. That's why games like the Anaheim game are so huge. I'm going to be honest, if they lost that Minnesota game, that would have been a problem, because that should have been a Peter Mrazek shutout, if I'm being honest. Granted, Boldy was going to get one eventually with the way he was playing in the third period.
Yeah. Hit the bar earlier. Yeah.
Jeez. But, this is a team that 16 games into the season is probably right around where we expected them to be. Just the way they got there is probably not the way we expected. And, they puts them right in a prime position to get a top forward in this year's draft. There's a lot of good
they're
power
still
forwards.
Probably picking top 5, maybe not number 1 or number 2 like the past years, but probably top 5. Yeah,
most likely. I think the goal right now is just to get Bedard some confidence back, because he's fighting it right now. And
he just needs one.
Clear as day. Yep, 100%. And I don't know. I feel like they just need to show him tape of like how Braden Point gets used, how Artemi Panarin gets used, how all these great right-handed shots get used, Nathan McKinnon. It all starts with them using their shot to deceive the other team and get the playmaking. But the problem is, like, the one goal they had, what was it, 2 games ago? The game before the Wild, I forget who they played, but
I'm blanking out.
Dallas. I think it's Dallas. I think
Yes,
they
yes,
played
yes. I
Dallas.
think you're right.
The only reason they got a point was because Donato got some crazy behind the back pass to Bedard in space. That's the only time he got space the whole game. It's a very easy offense to cover, which makes it frustrating for a 19-year-old that can't get space. I think Teravainen on the same line helps that a very good amount. And I think that's something that they need to look back at, even if Teravainen's playing well in a penalty kill shutdown role. It benefits both of them in the long run. It's going to get you more goals. It's going to get Bedard more space. I think the top line should be Donato, Bedard, Teravainen.
Agreed, yeah.
And if it's not Donato, I would like them to run Bertuzzi. I know it didn't work in the preseason, but like Tyler Bertuzzi creates so much space in normal, like I'm watching him on the second line with Hall. He's creating space for these guys. And that's something Bedard desperately would need. So like I don't know why you wouldn't try to run it for at least a game. I get it.
A try, yeah.
And let's be honest, like Foligno should not be playing second line center on this team.
And the funny thing is, he's been so good. Like, he's given it his all. Like, I think the stats are in his favor, like, especially if bad stats. But yeah, you gotta have the guys that you paid money to play better. I mean, Bertuzzi, you're seeing glimpses. I still think there's more you can get out of him. Tavo, there was like a stretch there where like he was really good in the first few games, but kind of
he's always been a streaky player,
mm-hmm.
but it's like he went cold and they just said, all right, you're going to be a shutdown guy now. And I just don't think that's the answer.
No, might work in a pinch. Like, it's good to know that
of course,
for the future. Yeah. Like, if you're thinking to next year and like down the line, if you add more high end talent than Tavo, like that's a good thing to know. Like, that you have in your back pocket that you could play Tavo on a third line check and roll and pencil him in for the odd goal. But yeah, I think for now, I think you need to stabilize Connor Bedard's line mates. I think I was reading the Scott Power article where he said, well, I think he played with Phil Kurashev like 73% of his minutes last year. And like, even though like Phil Kurashev isn't the best line for Bedard, like you still put him there and he produced. So, and I think his most common line mate this year is Tavo, and he's only at like 56%. Like, I think you just need to stabilize the top line a bit more. Like, I get moving things around, trying things, but like give it a few games. Let Tavo put on the first line, let Bertuzzi put on the first line. I mean, that's what you signed the guys for after all. I feel like Joey Anderson's got to be a regular in the lineup, and I think that's evidenced by them sending down Andreas Athanasiou. I mean, he had a very good year in 22-23, but just that injury just killed him. And I feel like that's that. Like, we talked about Taylor Hall like off camera. I think on Xbox we were talking about, Taylor Hall's game is built on speed. He had that injury, and now he's not slow, but he's certainly not fast. Like, he's lost a bit of a step, and he wants to be part of this team going forward. And it's just like, I don't know, Kyle Davidson looking at that, like how kind of south Andreas Athanasiou look. I think you also got to look at Taylor Hall and be like, all right, if we're not getting a discount, like we're not going to sign you for another 2-3 years. So. Yeah, but I still think you can get a bit more out of Taylor Hall. Like, you could get more out of Tyler Bertuzzi, Tavo Teravainen, Connor Bedard. It's gonna happen. Like, he just needs one goal to go in, and then like I think everything else will fall in place. Like, again, I like how the bottom six is playing, like Foligno, Dickinson, Anderson. However you arrange it, but you can put McCabe in there as well. And then like, it's so funny to me that the fourth line of Maroon, Reichel, and Smith is actually working. Defense, like, again, so much more structured than what it's been in previous years. That's a promise. Yeah, like Seth Jones, again, we rag on him, but like he's still a legitimate top pairing defenseman. Like, Connor Murphy looks like way better than he has in previous years, which is promising. I mean, Alex Vlasic, it's so incredible, like getting him to watching him develop, like not only being just a shutdown beast, like monster to play against in the defensive end, but like now he's getting some offensive flair. And like, not that they've been incredible, but like they've looked the part. Wyatt Kaiser and Nolan Allen are looking very good as like third pairing guys for the futures. And yeah, like the goaltending is good. I think Jay Fresh Stats put it like they're in, I think, number 9 for like goals saved above average. So they've gotten great goaltending. Like it's funny to me, like two of probably the biggest disappointments last year, Lucas Reichel and Arvid Soderblom, have arguably been the biggest surprises this year. So I think that's sports. You think it's going to go one way and then it goes in another. Sometimes that can be good, sometimes that can be bad. But no, it all in all, like yeah, the record, like the results might not show up, but I'm way bigger believer of the process than I was last year or even coming into the season. It's like nice to see some tangible results like a fifth of the way through the season. There's still a lot of hockey to be played, and there's going to be a stretch where they just play like shit. Like I'm still waiting for that, but it still really hasn't happened yet. So all I can say is just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, like there's like 9 games this year that have had the Hawks where they have pulled the goalie, so like they're in 1-goal games. I think that's a sign of growth. I think it just comes down to offensive consistency. Like we said, I think the power play needs to be more consistent. Penalty kill's been fantastic this year, I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
Their
A lot
aggressive
better, a lot
approach
more aggressive. Yeah.
has worked tons better. I think guys like Kurashev actually should get credit for that too. Kurashev and Teravainen have brought that aggression to the penalty kill. It really just comes down to execution on offense. Not being as passive with the cycling. I think they get caught up high a lot where they just want to throw a wrist shot on net from the point. And like, yeah, that works out sometimes, but it's got to involve getting inside the dots in some fashion. And
Gotta get to the net. That's how you make the money.
Yep. And I think that comes from guys like Bertuzzi. I think that comes from guys like Donato. I think that comes from guys like Smith, who we've already seen work well in a bumper role. That's just going to come with confidence, I think. And yeah, I mean, that's really all my thoughts are on the team as of now. I think Kaiser's itching for a goal. I think that's another thing. Like this guy has been close a couple times, but he's got the Tyson Berry syndrome right now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you can look at it two ways. Like, yeah, they're 691, but again, you could argue they could be better. I'm seeing this is a reminder of me not to go on Twitter that much, which I haven't been as of recent, but I just like seeing like tweets from Ben Pope and Scott Powers where they're like, oh, Connor Bedard is struggling. And then you check the replies. It's always like an echo chamber, like the 1% of the crazy fans where it's like, oh, Bedard's a bust. I was promised a generational player, and this is what we get. And yeah, you want to see him score more goals. I think that's going to happen. There's plays where I thought, like, it's not that he's not trying. I think sometimes he's overthinking it. I remember that Anaheim game where he had like a breakaway and you like look behind him to see if anyone was coming with him. I'm like, that's a moment where you just got to like rip it, man. Like your shot is top 10 in the NHL. I think he's just getting a little too much in his own head. It sucks seeing him like break a stick every time he misses. Like it's not for lack of chances. Like one just needs to go in. And yeah, the power play, it's so inconsistent because it can win them games. Like I think of that Edmonton game where I think they had 2 or 3 goals, that Anaheim game where they had a couple goals, and then there's just games where they cannot like enter the zone, make plays, and like they're giving up odd man chances, and they're just like in their own end for what feels like most of it. So, yeah, in the offense, it's gonna be a struggle. I mean, even if Frank Nazar comes up, I just don't know like how much is that really going to help. I think it will, but it's not like going to transform this team into an elite offensive machine. So it's gonna take some time. I wonder when Kyle Davidson like in his mind is like, okay, enough of like getting all these draft picks. When are we going to start getting young players, like I don't know, like a Trevor, like we've brought his name up so long, like when are we going to start to go for guys like Trevor Zegras? Because I mean, not that you need to go crazy and like trade future first for a superstar, but I think the Blackhawks are going to start to get to a point where you do need to acquire some NHL talent. And there was, I think, in 32 Thoughts a while ago where, the Blackhawks are looking for a second line center. And it's like the thing of, everyone's looking for a cheap used car with good mileage on it. It's like, yeah, I think everyone's looking for that. Everyone's looking for a second line center. And it's nice that they left a spot for Frank Nazar to take it. But yeah, in the future, I think they're going to have to add more forward talent. But that's also what this draft class is going to do. But yeah, I think all in all, it's promising. I don't know if you have any more thoughts to add.
All good.
All right. Speaking of Frank Nazar and the prospects, so in 9 games in the AHL, he has 11 points, so 4 goals, 7 assists. Um, Artem Levshunov got back from his injury. He scored a goal, which is cool. Sounds like he's kind of been a little inconsistent. Has struggled to find his footing, but I mean, coming off an injury, we can kind of give him some a mulligan. Sounds like Kevin Korchinski has kind of been struggling in Rockford. I think the first game they played, he scored like a highlight reel goal, and that's the only goal that he's scored since then. So it's a long season. I hope he like gets he gets it going again. Again, only 20 years old. Alex Vlasic only became a full-time defender at 22. So like he needs some time. More like promising for defensive prospects. Sam Renzel has 10 points in 10 games with Minnesota, and 4 of them are goals, which is it's so crazy. It's been cool to watch him how he's developed, because they were saying, oh well, he's going to take 1 year in, I think, in the USHL, and then take another full 4 years in college before he signs with Chicago. Now it sounds like he might be in Chicago by the end of the year. So yeah, it's tantalizing to think of the future with this defense if everyone hits their ceiling, like a big mobile defensive core that can move the puck. So it's been awesome to see Sam Renzel, how he's developed. Oliver Moore kind of struggling, 1 goal, 4 assists in 10 games. Hopefully he starts picking up, but I think he had a slower start last year. Sasha Bovair has 2 goals, 5 assists in 9 games, and Nick Lardis in the OHL in 16 games, 14 goals and 6 assists. Is that good?
So they say. I mean,
my sources are telling me. All right.
Yeah, the kids are all right. I think the defenseman in Rockford is a little concerning, but it's early. This is where I'd rather them get the growing pains out now than later, but I'm just going to be the guy. I'm going to play devil's advocate. The noise is only going to get louder for Lev Shunov. You are in a big market. You need to produce. If you don't produce, there's a guy in Russia who's putting up 4 a game right now. So this is just how your life's going to work in Chicago if you don't figure it out. Like, I hate to be that guy, but this is just what this city does. Go look what they're doing with Caleb Williams with the Bears right now. If you do not perform and you are picked high, you will be compared to your predecessors. Or not your predecessors, but the people who picked around you. And you just have to produce at this point. You just have to produce. I saw someone try to say like the excuse of, oh, well, he just wants to be in Chicago. You know what makes you get to Chicago faster? Playing better hockey. But it's a whole nother thing. Like the mental lapses need to be fixed. Korchinski needs to be able to produce 5-on-5. Big growing pains in Rockford, but that's what Rockford's for. Nazar's a great bright side. I think Slaggert's looked really good on his wing. Colton Dock's
doing your extension, by the way. Yeah.
Yep. Colton Dock's doing good stuff too down there. Camesso's been up and down, but Guyan's struggled a lot at UMD, which is concerning. But
goaltending, yeah.
Up and down. Renzel's been a pleasant surprise, though. I will say that. He's taken a steady trajectory every year. And I didn't see this offensive upside in his game even back at Waterloo. So it's a nice change of pace, to say the least. Because I saw someone say, like, if he continues his offensive trajectory, that's like Dougie Hamilton potential on your backhand.
Oh, mama, I would love that.
Yeah. Like, you want to talk about a Seth Jones replacement? That's your Seth Jones replacement. If he continues that offensive trajectory. Obviously, I think Lev Shunov can do that, but like you and I have both said multiple times that this guy could be like a Haskin and McAvoy type that probably benefits this team more in the long run. But if you're offense...
I was going to say, even if like Lev Shunov is like Mo Seider, Aaron Ekblad, like you take that. Like
Aaron Ekblad just won a cup.
Mm-hmm. And has won a Calder. Not saying necessarily Lev Shunov is going to do that, but like have that kind of impact on a franchise.
Yeah, and I don't expect him to be up this year. I just hope that over the course of this season he can develop and show signs of growth, because that's really all you can ask for out of a 19-year-old prospect.
Yep. What was I going to say? I have no idea.
Frank Nazar needs to be on the Blackhawks. Sorry, that's
yeah.
Like, I'm
When
so
does it-
serious. If he's still over point a game in 7 games, he should be on the roster by Christmas. I'm just gonna say. I'll
I
put
would
it
even
on
say
them.
before that, like after American Thanksgiving and start December, yeah, he should probably be up by then.
100%.
Do you want to talk about a team that made a lot of moves this offseason, made a lot of splashy moves, but has a worse record than the Chicago Blackhawks right now? Could you guess who that team would be?
Did their season get projected by a U2 concert? Yes or no?
Oh, Utah, U2. Oh, U2 we're talking about here. Okay. A Utah concert. I don't know what the hell is doing with that. Yeah, National Predators are 5-9-2 right now.
And one of their wins is against the Blackhawks. Idiots.
Yeah, we should have won that game. Broads.
Literally win that in the Winnipeg game, and that's exactly what I think their record should be right now. Period.
Mm-hmm. And the San Jose game. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Then you could argue like, oh, they shouldn't have beat LA. They should beat Minnesota.
The only game I'll get actually bent over about is the Winnipeg game, because you should have won that fucking game. Like, period. But the Nashville game is just a sign of this team is still growing. But also, like, Nashville is just a tire fire right now. It's bad.
And yeah, there was like a while, and it still might be the case if this team goes out in the first round. Like, I think the Colorado Avalanche, I think there's a lot of urgency right there, but man, the Nashville Predators are in a pretty deep hole right now, and they committed a lot of money, and they already tried like trying to change things up, shake things up a little by dumping Dante Fabro on waivers. So I don't think was really like amazing to begin with. Clearly put him on waivers, but yeah, Barry Trotz, like there's certainly a bit of urgency there right now, and I want to bring up their Puckpedia page now, because they spent a lot of money, but they also have like a lot of money on the books from buyouts, and I feel that's like the more interesting thing to me. Where are you?
No, but
okay,
I want to
add. Sorry.
I just want to add something, Nashville, while you're looking up this stat. Like, we've seen it time and time again with teams. Like, I think the best example of this in recent memory is Florida 2 years ago when they got Tkachuk. It took them a while to find their stride with all those moves that they made. Like, when you have, I don't think we're in a time with the younger audience in hockey and football and basketball and baseball, where people playing so much I genuinely think it's this. Like, people play so much franchise mode that they think you could just plug and play guys like it's nothing. That's not how real life works. Like, you need to generate chemistry with your partners. And I think that genuinely shows with Nashville right now. Jonathan Marchessault is not on the same page with a single player on that team. Period. Steven Stamkos is not on the same page with anyone on that power play. Period. Philip Forsberg still fighting the injuries he had last year. Very clear. And they're an older team. Like, O'Reilly's got another year under him. Forsberg's got another year under him. Yossi's got another year under him. They're not built to get this jolt of excitement coming from them. And I mean that in terms of like young talent. This is an older team that needs to hit their stride. And I think Father Time is just catching up to some of these guys. I think the analytics showed it with Stamkos last year that he wasn't as good 5-on-5 as he's been in previous seasons.
PP Merchant.
I couldn't see. I'll be the first to say I didn't see Jonathan Marchessault regressing to the point that he has. But this is a team that, and like, here's another thing. Like, one of the biggest parts of Nashville being good last year was Gustav Nyquist in a top line role. He's not doing that anymore.
Crazy. Yeah.
Gustav Nyquist had like 70 points last year. And they're expecting him to do that with second power play minutes and playing on the third line. Like, you're not going to, or second line, you're not going to get that. Their kids are still not taking steps. I think someone showed a list of David Poile draft picks since they made the Cup final, and it's abysmal.
It's tough.
Fabro, Tolvanen, Tomasino, Askarov, 3 out of 4 are gone, and 1's a question mark. Congratulations, guys. That's awesome.
2 of them put on waivers as well, like not even traded for assets.
Maybe Barry Trotz knew something that we didn't, because like he has 3 first-round picks this year. and they're good first. Well, not good, but like you got your first, which
Three
fucking
firsts is three
stinks,
firsts, man.
and you
Yeah.
got Tampa's, they're trekking along, but they're not going to be first in the Atlantic good. And then you have Vegas, who Vegas is just cracked. I will just
Yeah.
but
They really are so good.
this is the point, though. Like you're in a very, even when they mess up, they're in a good position. Granted, they're not because they spend all this money in the offseason. There's a lot of long-term contracts on this team, but you could pivot.
And a lot of dead money too.
Yeah, don't get me started on all the buyouts.
I laugh at it. I want to read through it again. So.
Please do, because I know what's it like. Duchesne, Johansson, Turris, like
yeah, you betcha. So Matt Duchesne bought out, has 4 years left. This year he'll count for 5.5 against the cap. Next year 6.5. The year after that, and then the year after that 1.5 and 1.5. Ryan Johansson is weird because with like this contract termination thing, it says, well, they have 4 million retained on him and then like minus 4 million because of the contract termination. But still, like another example of a center that they swung on and missed and like gave up a lot of money and then they're not even on the team anymore. Speaking of which, Kyle Turris, 4 more years at $2 billion against the cap. And then I find this so funny. Like they only retained 250,000 for Ekholm and they have another 2 years of that. So kind of like Minnesota in a way where I like the teams making these big splash. Like it was cool to see Nashville be like, oh, we're gonna get Marchessault, oh, we're gonna get Stamkos, and in theory, you're like, oh, these two guys that Stamkos is a Hall of Famer. This is a guy who scored 50, 60 goals, 40 goals perennial, or even him like dropping off. Like you could still pencil him in 30 goals, even if he's getting that mostly on the power play. And him having a big chip on his shoulder, and same with Jonathan Marchessault. I mean, that guy thrives on it. Like, look how many teams he was cut from, and then he was on Florida, had that great year. He's like, no, well, you're not good enough. You're going to Vegas. Goes on, wins a cup, wins a Conn Smythe. Like, hard not to see why they would go after these guys, go after other guys like Ryan O'Reilly in free agency. But yeah, just looking at the age, Phil Forsberg, 30 years old. Steven Stamkos, 34. Jonathan Marchessault, 33. Ryan O'Reilly, 33. Gustav Nyquist is 35. Colton Sissons, 31. And then the defense, like Roman Josi is great. I mean, I don't think you could put any of the blame on him. He's 34 years old. He could still go for another few years. But then, yeah, you signed for this contract is still insane to me. Brady Shea for another 7 years, and he's 30 years old. And then you got Luke Shen for another couple of years at 25. It's just, yeah, all this money they got locked up in really old players. And just looking at the points, their point leader is Phil Forsberg with 13 points in 60 games. Oh, that's not bad. Like 8 goals. Okay, like 40 goal pace right there. Roman Josi is doing his thing. And then, yeah, it just like drops up 10 points for O'Reilly in 16 games. Marchessault, 9 points, 60 games. Only 3 goals. Gustav Nyquist, 8 points, 16 games. And then like Stamkos, only 8 points in 16 games. So, yeah, just not great. And it just like brings up the question, like, was that just a flash in a pan, or were they actually a good team? And with each day going, it's looking like all that like stretch they went on last year, it was a bit of a flash in the pan. But again, like you said, it takes a lot of time for older teams to kind of find their footing, especially when you've made a lot of moves. So who knows, maybe they go on another crazy run again. But regardless of what happens, I think Nashville is going to be a team to watch at the trade deadline, just because they have those 3 first-round picks. And like if things are going really bad, could they like pull the chute and maybe trade some of these big contracts? I don't know. I guess we'll see. We're still so early on in the season. There's still a couple weeks till American Thanksgiving. That's like the cutoff, the threshold we always look for. You know, if a team is going to be good, if they're going to make the playoffs or not. So, but yeah, fascinating in Nashville right now. Fascinating that they have a worse record than the Blackhawks right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you try to. Here's the thing: like they could literally do what the Caps did last year. Like this is the type of team that they built. It's a bunch of vets in that room. If you can't figure it out, I think that says a lot more about the room than it does about the coach, which I think is what everyone's trying to point fingers to right now.
Yeah, wouldn't that be crazy if they fired Hatcher for
hire Joe Quenneville? Like I can already see it. I can already see it. But
one of these teams are going to do it one of these days. I mean, fucking Bowman got hired. Like, of course, the team's going to hire Quenneville soon.
Quenneville's been in the rumor mill for a while now. I'm just like looking at the NHL right now and which team would fire their coach and hire him, and I'm already looking right at the one that will do it.
Colorado.
That's not the one I was thinking of, but that would suck if that happened. I was looking at Pittsburgh.
I mean, they already traded away Lars Eller. You know, sirens are going off in Pittsburgh right now. Yeah, when I was doing the interview with Steve, I was like, "Yeah, it is early, but what are some teams you think that could like make some crazy move if things don't go well?" And he brought up Pittsburgh, and like, yeah, I get it. What the hell do you even do it? Speaking of a team that has a lot of old contracts on their books, I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins, like Crosby, you can't go wrong with Crosby, and I'm pretty sure Malkin's off to a very good start this year. But other than that, no, not really. They have some horrendous contracts with Riley Graves being the one off the top of my head, and then Tristan Jarry. Hang on, I'm gonna pull up Puckpedia. Yeah, so they have Erik Karlsson, who has another 3 years left at $10 million. Whatever. Chris Letang, they have signed till 41 apparently at $6.1 million. Tristan Jarry still has another 4 years at 5.3, and I'm pretty sure the two goalies like Nedeljkovic and Blomqvist are better than Tristan Jarry. Their buyouts, okay, there's not really any long-term buyouts there. Brian Russ, 32, still has 4 years left. Ricardo Kell has 4 years left. Yeah. Not great. I don't know what like the goal of Kyle Dubas is there, because he tried to make these moves, try to make Pittsburgh better, maybe try to make one last ditch effort, and just hasn't worked out that way. And they really don't have anything coming up in the system. And from what I was like reading, doesn't sound like they're gonna fire Mike Sullivan anytime soon. So yeah, I don't know what the hell Kyle Dubas does there. Like, I don't know if he came in being like, oh, okay, I'll sign these free agent contracts, but if it doesn't work out, I want to do a rebuild. And yeah, they trade away Lars Eller. I just don't know how you're going to move any of these big contracts.
Oh, you don't. That's how.
Yeah, you don't.
You don't, and you get the number one pick because this is how the NHL works.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right. They're getting James Hagens this year.
Yes, sir.
I mean, they're due every 20 years. I think they got Lemieux in I think it would have been 84, 85. They got Crosby in 2005. Yeah, we're due for another Penguins first overall pick, I guess. It's as simple as that. Okay, so the Central Division is very fascinating to me because we talked about the Predators. We kind of talked about the Avalanche a bit. Minnesota is doing surprisingly well. Dallas is doing exactly how I thought Dallas would be. And Winnipeg is off apparently to the best 15-game start in NHL history. They were 14-1-0. Of course, the only loss coming against the Maple Leafs. It's not like that. Like, it's crazy that they've got this to start, but it's not surprising that they're doing well. I think our view of Winnipeg is skewed because of like all the early playoff exits they've had, like losing to Colorado in 5 games last year, even though I think they were like top 5 team in the entire NHL, losing to the eventual Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights. It's like, more often than not, they've had a competitive team. Obviously, being a smaller market team, they've had trouble like getting free agents, but they've done a very good job in trades. I mean, that Pierre-Luc Dubois trade has worked really well for them. Like drafting guys like Connor Hellebuyck in the mid rounds, obviously hitting on your high-end picks that you've kept for a while with Scheifele and Ehlers and Connor and Morrissey and all those guys. So it's not that surprising, but man, is this the year that Winnipeg finally makes the run? Because I would love for that to happen. They're playing the Rangers right now. They're playing Boomers Rangers right now. But no, it's truly amazing the start that they've got off to.
Yeah, You know, it also helps when Connor Hellebuck plays at the level that we know he's capable of playing at. I
Mhm.
think Rick Bowness, before he left, put a good structure on that team that has stuck very well with a team that, let's be honest, 3 years ago did not know how to play defense at the way that
Nope.
they are.
Nope. Nope.
Um, you know, they have tremendous depth. Cole Perfetti's taken a huge step this year. Mark
Good.
Scheifele's back
Yeah.
to his 85, 90-point pace. Kyle Connor's still Kyle Connor. Josh Morrissey's still incredible. They've made great acquisitions over the years just to put themselves in a good position to succeed. And I think that starts with the guy who we're just not going to get. I'm not going to credit Kevin Shovelday off for this, but it's just they. This is the opposite side of most teams sticking to their guns, because there have been many times, like last offseason should have, for most teams, been a time where you blow something up. And they kind of just adapted to what they've become, which is just a strong two-way team that gets offensive sparks from a very good majority of their roster, which I think is something that not a lot of teams have the privilege of having. I mean, you know, Neil Pionk's got 14 points this year. Nino Niederreiter's got 12. That was a trade deadline acquisition like 2 years ago that they extended.
That they've hanged on to. Yeah.
Mason Appleton's got 10 and 15. Like, it's depth. It's just depth all across the board. They have 11 players with 10 or more points right now. And that includes guys like Ali Follow, who haven't even been on the hottest of streaks with like 6 points and 15. Like they just have depth all across the board. And you know, their top three guys are always great. They have 5 people with 6 or more goals. That's usually going to win you a lot of
Oh, by the way,
situations.
Gabe Velarde 13 points in 15 games. That's crazy.
Yep, big part of that Dubois trade, 100%. And then, you know, like I said, you have Connor Hellebuck doing Connor Hellebuck things. So this is a team that is probably going to finish at the top of the Western Conference, and it's just going to be like the Western Conference Leafs. It's just going to come down to how they perform in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But whether good or bad.
Yeah, they're not alone in the boat of all, like, yeah, you can have a great regular season and all, but doesn't matter. If you lose in the first round again, have another playoff early exit, doesn't really matter. And Winnipeg, like, to me, like, 2018 was kind of their year in a way. I really thought they were at least going to go to the Stanley Cup final, and Vegas just said nah to that. That I think the one series for me, that 2019 series that they play against the Blues, like they
Yep.
so easily could have taken that series. Like there were so many games that went down to the wire. I think there was a couple overtime games. Like I think in game 5 they were up 2-0. They could have taken the series lead, and then the Blues just scored like I think 2 or 3 goals in like the final few minutes. Like a lot of devastating playoff exits, and then like again, like I mentioned, losing to Vegas in the first round, and you just ran into the buzzsaw of Vegas, and then you lost to Colorado last year. And in a way, Winnipeg does kind of remind me of Vegas, like the way they can roll 4 lines that they're tough to play against. It also helps that they have a better goalie than Vegas, but it's like you got the high end talent, you got your Scheifele, you got your Ehlers, you got your Connor, you got those guys, but now again, like you got legitimate depth with Velarde, like Adam Lowry, Mason Appleton, like they're just deep everywhere. I don't really see a hole in their forward lineup. Defense, they could maybe add another defenseman, but I just feel like one, having Connor Hellebuck helps, and two, like their defensive structure, they just play so well. But we're still a ways away from April. It's a great start for Winnipeg, but yeah, we gotta ultimately see what they do then. Same with a lot of teams, but it would be nice to see Winnipeg at least go on a deep run this year, because if really the only one they went on was the one in 2018. So
Yeah, I think that just comes from consistency and actually scoring in the playoffs.
yeah, and Connor Hellebuck was so bad last year's playoff. Like you got to think a goalie that talented, like that's gonna flip another around where he plays a series and just like completely shuts it down.
100%.
Yeah, the Central Division is an interesting place. Like Winnipeg, Minnesota's interesting. Colorado's interesting. I wonder like how like I don't think like any like it's so hard to fire GMs, but I wonder how hot like Jared Bednar's seat is. And I mean, it doesn't help that you're playing Oliver Shillington at forward, but I wonder like, are they going to fire a coach anytime soon? Like, I feel they could be a Joel Quenneville candidate if it really goes south, or if they make a trade. And Utah, like I think all within one day, they just lost their whole defensive core. Like they got Sergachev, they traded for Oli Mata from Detroit, but yeah, it's gonna be a little tough for them. But they're still like they're 6-6-3, and then yeah, the National Predators 5-9-2, the Central Division, very intriguing. So we talked a bit about the Pittsburgh Penguins earlier, and I want to talk about a team that's been interlinked with them for the past 20 years because of Crosby and Ovechkin and all the times they made the playoffs. I want to talk about the Washington Capitals, and not only them, like just doing what they did last year, where they like barely made it in, by luck and other teams sucking, but like they're legitimately doing great this year. They're 10-4-0, and again, like last year, Ovechkin, you're thinking the way he was scoring goals, oh, he might just limp it, like he might barely limp his way to the goal record. But at the pace he's playing, at the pace the Capitals are playing, like he's easily going to get that by the end of the season. And it's truly awesome to see, because it's hard for teams to do like a retool on the fly, because it always sounds good in theory, but either like it doesn't work or you just end up going into a rebuild. It's hard to be like, okay, like we're not going to bottom out, but we're going to make trades, we're going to make signings to make this team better. And with the Capitals, they've taken a lot of gambles. Like it still breaks my heart with Dylan Strome. I'm glad he's found a home, but it's so baffling to me that trade deadline, the 2022 trade deadline, no team, like not even like a third or second round pick. I think he went a couple of days into free agency without getting a contract, and now he's found a home in Washington. 22 points in 14 games, easily like the best stretch of his career. Had 67 points last year, 65 points before that. It's truly awesome, like not only seeing Ovechkin scoring, but Dylan Strome scoring as well, getting a lot of points and being like a big part of the team.
Yeah, I mean, I predicted the Caps to be pretty decent this year. Didn't think they would be hitting their stride as well as they have. But like, if we're being honest, they have two very good goaltenders. Their defense is well-rounded when they're healthy. And if one or two guys took a step, they'd be good offensively. And Connor McMichael's taking that step.
Mhm.
And
It's his breaking out year right now. Yeah.
Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a detriment to the roster, which also helps, I think.
That's also what you're hoping for. Like that's a long-term project. I don't think Brian McClellan was acquiring him in mind to be like, oh, he's got to get like 60, 70 points this year, or else, we're dumping him. Like, I think like they have it in mind, or it might take like a few years to really get him back on track. But like how he's doing right now is fine, though.
I also think another guy that's not getting enough credit is Alexei Protas. He's got 13 and 14. Like,
Dude,
he's
like,
6'7". I'm pretty sure. Like, he is just a giant
monster,
presence on the ice. 6'6".
Absolute union in all the size of that lad.
Yeah, I think the line's like Protas, Ovechkin, and Strome. So that's just
crazy.
Just gross, giant ass line. Trevor Van Riemsdyk has 7 assists in 14 games. Get
excited. Let's go.
Yeah, this is a roster that is just they're going back to the old Capitals ways, which is just top 6 is gonna fucking just plow through everyone. That's what I gathered from looking at this. And, on top of that, you're also just looking at the fact that, they have 2 competent goaltenders. That's a huge difference, Charlie Lindgren's not performing at the 930 he was last year, but Logan Thompson's 7-0. Like, this is the stuff you talk about. Like,
Canadian Olympian Logan Thompson to you.
Yeah, probably at this point. Jeez, him and Mackenzie Blackwood. Like, good Lord.
Let's go! 40 save shutout against the Devils. Get excited, Canada.
He's already good at beating the perimeter. He's already good at beating Hughes Brothers. He'll do it on the national stage too, but international stage. But they're a fun team. They're a fun team to watch. I mean, I kind of figured they were going to take steps, just not the steps they made. And it's been very impressive to watch, if we're being honest. And, Ovi's going to break that record. It's crazy that Strome's performing at the clip that probably people thought he was going to perform at when he got drafted 3rd overall.
Yeah, I know.
And Tom Wilson is still healthy. So always a good sign.
Oh, speaking of Canadian Olympians, You talk about the Capitals. Oh, going back to the old Capitals, yeah, literally acquiring, getting back Lars Eller, and I forgot that Jacob Vrana is on their team, and he's on their third line.
Yep. Jacob Ron is like actually a contributor on that team too, which is kind of crazy. Not a contributor, but he's got points, which is more than people could say.
Yeah, like Brian McClellan took a lot of risks. Like there's an alternate scenario where everything has just gone to shit and it's not working. Yeah, like taking a chance on Dylan Strome in free agency, taking a chance on trading Pierre-Luc Dubois, like signing back Jakob Vrana and trading some like second and third round picks, getting guys like Mangiapane, who I don't think is doing great, but that's like a guy who's younger and could
half
be
a point a game.
Well, there you go. That's not even that bad. Getting Jake Chikrin and trading for Rasmus Sandy and like a lot of risky moves, but so far it's paid off. And I think of their drafting, I think they've done a really good job of drafting. I'm thinking like Pittsburgh has done the opposite. Like, yeah, they tried to make these big moves, but it didn't work out, and their drafting is terrible because they've had no draft picks. Whereas Washington, they've made these big moves, they've paid off, but they've also drafted well because they still got Ryan Leonard. He could potentially be on the team by the end of the year. That could be a boost for them. I think would fit in perfectly with guys like Alexi Protas and Tom Wilson that are just and Pierre-Luc Dubois that are just and really Alex Ovechkin, like just as an annoying team to play against. And like you got Andrew Crystal still. I can't remember what their draft pick was this year, but I feel like they have a decent prospect pipeline. I don't think they're ever going to bottom out like I think Pittsburgh might. So yeah, it's cool to see a team, kind of do like a turnaround that's legitimately watched a fun, even though they're a bit older.
I was gonna say they're on opposite sides of the spectrum as opposed to Pittsburgh, who's just a tire fire, which is always great.
Yeah, it's great till they get the first overall pick with rumors of moving to Kansas City.
Jesus fucking Christ. It's a joke of a team.
Let's get into some extensions that have happened over the last month. Jake Oettinger signing an 8-year contract worth $8.25 per, which is basically in line with the contract Swayman signed, the money that Linus Ullmark got. Shea Theodore signing a 7-year contract worth $7.425 per, and I saw that and I'm like, oh fucking course, Vegas would get a contract like that.
They always do it.
Mm-hmm.
They always do it. They are just the best at locking people up at the right time. Now they have him and Hanifin, who are Eichel's probably closest teammates for the next 7 years. And it clearly shows on the ice because Jack Eichel's having statistically his best season yet as a NHL player. So that's why you lock up your guys when you should. And I think the Oettinger contract's great. And I think there's one more that you're about to mention.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lafreniere.
Yeah, that one's well, everyone's going to have their own opinion on that. I don't think that contract is the best, especially when you look at who they need to sign in the next year. Wouldn't be allocating my money that way. Let's just put it that way.
I think it will work out with Lafreniere. It's just a matter of will you have the other money to sign the other people in New York? Because not only is it Shesterkin, obviously, but I think K'Andre Miller is up as well. So one of those guys is gone. And I don't think they're going to let go of Igor. So, K'Andre Miller on the trading block?
I hope so. Hope he's a Blackhawk. It'd be very epic.
An alternate reality where they had a different draft in 2018.
In another life.
But good for Lafreniere because I remember I wanted to bring up the point with we say on the show so many times these guys that had to develop during the COVID years, how it took how Reichel's finally starting to get his game back together. Luckily, Lafreniere wasn't even half a point a game player until last year, the season before that, and now he cashes in on a 7-year contract. So that's reason to stick with your young guys. So good for Lafreniere, but it'll be interesting to see how the Rangers handle those other contracts. Speaking of I just noticed that now. I don't know when you put this in the notes, but it just says Stamkos now sucks. LOL.
I think that was Boomer, which is great.
Oh, was it? That's so funny.
Boomer speaking
All
Boomer speaking just what I was thinking, so it's all good.
His hater language. All right.
As he should.
On the topic of what could have been in 2018 in this era and with the Washington Capitals, I came across this story on Reddit that I would like to read before we end the podcast here. Ted Leonsis on the Forsberg for Erat trade and Nick Backstrom's trade request in 2017. All content is from Craig Cousins' new book, The Franchise. Leonsis on Forsberg for Erat. This group won a lot of games. It played entertaining brand of hockey, but under McPhee, they never broke through in the playoffs. On April 3rd, 2013, the Capitals traded prospect Philip Forsberg to the Nashville Predators for Marty Erat. The Capitals had the foresight to pick Forsberg 11th overall in 2012 in a draft that also landed them Tom Wilson, Chandler Stevenson, Connor Carrick, and Christian Djoos. But after getting a closer look at Forsberg following that draft, organizational doubts crept in. Coaches didn't love his game at the summer prospect camp. Viewings of him playing and swinging led to reports back to McPhee that included concerns about the lack of start and stop in his game. There wasn't enough compete. The criticism was premature. Forsberg blossomed into a star after the trade. That's why both George and coach Adam Oates lost their jobs, Leonsis said. Literally what happened there was the last minute. There's this huge trade, Marty Erat for Philip Forsberg, and we thought, Adam said, we're going to the playoffs. We need a money guy, experienced guy. And what we heard afterwards was George makes the trade. Erat shows up and Adam says, I don't want this guy. Later on in the chapter, Leonsis reveals that Backstrom asked the Caps to consider trading him. But it was the ballroom celebration at the team hotel that led to an exchange Leonsis won't forget. He walked in and the players were already celebrating hard as they would for weeks. He spotted Nick Backstrom with the cup, having a great time. Backstrom looked over at Leonsis, spotted him and his wife Lynn, and ran over with the cup. He handed it to Leonsis, and he starts crying, Leonsis said. And he goes, thank you, I love you, thank you, I'm an idiot. Leonsis laughed, retelling what Backstrom said to him. I can't believe I said, I don't think we're going to win a Stanley Cup. Thank you for not listening to me, Leonsis said, and sharing Backstrom's response at the celebration. It was a very endearing moment. Thank you for not listening to me. A Moment for the Ages was created by Leonsis's refusal to give in to Backstrom's trade request following that crushing loss to the Penguins in the 2017 playoffs. After the elimination game, a large group of players had dinner together at the steakhouse at the MGM National Harbor in Maryland. Team Sweden management was pushing hard to get Backstrom out of the U.S. to Cologne, Germany, to join the team in the World Championships. Team Sweden was all over him, and he said, I'm going to dinner with these guys. If you want me, you can wait another day, Orpik said. Knowing Nicky, that's not surprising. There was a lot of discouragement at that dinner, a lot of frustration. Everyone felt like it was a blown opportunity with maybe the best roster ever assembled in Washington. The pressure from the outside was mounting, as was the criticism. The exit interviews were emotional and lengthy. It was under these circumstances that Backstrom openly questioned whether he and Ovechkin could win together in Washington. He came to us after the season and said, it's not working, Leonsis said. It's obvious something is wrong in this mix, and so I think it's a good time for you to consider what Alex and I make a good team, and will we ever be able to win a Stanley Cup? I'm at the point in my career where if I don't win a Stanley Cup, I'll be unfulfilled. Can it happen here?
Wow.
For the first time, I'm really questioning that so much that I want you to consider. Should I be traded? That's
Dude.
that.
And you know what's crazy about this whole situation? Because like now, like the memories are starting to flow back from summer 2017. There were legit rumors that Ovechkin was going to get traded.
I remember the Dangle podcast that's like looking at trade offers, like Ovechkin hypothetical trades.
Yeah, and one of them was to the Blackhawks for Brent Seabrook. So, God, I wish Steve Dangle was the GM of the Capitals, but oh well.
I gotta go back and listen to that. That's so funny. That's one of the trades.
But there's two ways to look at this. One, it's incredible what the Caps did in 2018 because I think any Capitals fan can tell you, I know because one of my close friends is one. Vibes were at an all-time low in 2017. They got punched in the fucking mouth, and they had a chance to win that series, and they got punched in the mouth in Game 7.
I remember they were down 3-1, and then they were just
they came all the way back.
Completely shut down. Yeah, in Game 7 by the hands of Marc-Andre Fleury.
That was a series where Ovechkin wasn't getting it done. That was a series where they were not getting the depth scoring again, which has been just a glaring red flag. And you're gonna love where I'm about to take this, because how does this affect the Leafs? And that's immediately where my brain went when I'm listening to this, because there's two sides of every coin. You know what I mean? There's a side where you stick with your guns year after year, and eventually you break through.
They're probably the number one example of that. The Caps.
I can look time and time again. The Lightning are another great example of that.
They lost to the Capitals in 2018. They were shut out in Game 6 and 7 of the conference final. Yeah,
it's a prime example, and I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how the guys in the room respond. And if you look at the way these Capitals players were talking, they were either going to win the cup that year, or they were going to blow the fucking team up. And that is clear as day, as the coach who won the cup did not return to the team the next season. This is a team that had the backs against the wall and found a way to get it done. And there's two ways that situation always goes. You either break through that glass ceiling, or you end up in a position like a San Jose Sharks. You know what's great? It's not just the Leafs that are in this situation of trying to break through that glass ceiling.
We talked about the Jets. I would add the Hurricanes in there, who are
Dallas, dude.
Dallas might actually be the best example, because again, I've said so many times, they've done everything but win a cup. They've lost. They've ran into Vegas. They ran into St. Louis when they won the cup. I think they ran into another team that won the cup. But you got to break through one of those years too.
Yes, you 100% have to break through. And if you can't do it, I think it speaks more to the people in the room than it does anyone else. And clearly, Ted Leonis saw something there, because there are a lot of GMs that would just make that trade, straight up, and just say, I understand. We will put you in the best situation for you to achieve that. And they said, no, this is the crew that's going to get it done. And they got it done. There are at least 5 teams in the league right now that need to take a hard look in the mirror if this season isn't the season for them, which sucks, because that means only one team can get it done. But I'll tell you right now, teams like Carolina, where Marty Necas has 24 points in 14 games. I want to make that very clear. Been meaning to say that the whole show. They got their superstar player, and it's a guy that they bridged. So nice job, guys.
Who they were apparently going to trade, and they kept him.
And he's going crazy.
Yeah.
So Buffalo, I don't know what the hell you were holding back on, but you probably should have done it, because him and Tage could have just torched the league. It's a situation where it's not up or shut up time, and I think that's the case for the Caps, and it worked in 2018, and that's the case for teams like Dallas, teams like Toronto, teams like Carolina. It's shit or get off the pot time, and if they can't get it done this season, it might not get done. Genuinely think that, especially with teams like Carolina and Toronto. I think this is the last straw.
Well, I got Edmonton to that list too.
Edmonton, I won't even add to that list, because they just extended Draisaitl. You have your chance. Yeah. Obviously, they've gotten closer than any. They were a goal away. So, that's why I'm not going to add them to this.
Yeah. For me, they got to win with Bouchard, though, because I don't know what that. Well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. So it just comes down to your players either really want it or they're complacent. And I think there's a lot of teams in the league where you can look at, how the team's been constructed and how they've performed. And I think there's a lot of complacency going on in the NHL right now. Not saying that's the Hurricanes, but I'll tell you one thing. Dallas, most organizations that get to where Dallas has gotten to usually make a big move to get over the hump. Most teams like Toronto, they change the formula, and they're sticking to it, because if I'm being honest, there have been 3 cases that it has worked in the last decade. So the evidence is the proof's in the pudding. Colorado, they stuck with their guns. Granted, they adapted and added Kadri and stuff, but they got over the hump. Tampa, stuck with their guns, made depth
I
changes that
remember.
got them over the hump. It's all
Yeah.
depth scoring. This whole tangent I'm on goes back to depth scoring because that's the only reason the Caps won that fucking cup in 2018. Besides the fact that Ovechkin actually played like how he's supposed to play in the playoffs. A lot of things
You
have to
could
go right for you to
argue-
win a Stanley Cup. Crazy, right?
And you could like argue that like he wasn't even the best player on that. Like you could argue because Netsov was better. That playoff run. Yeah.
But this is the point. Like you have to have multiple facets of scoring in the playoffs to win. And I think every Hawks Cup run, we can look back and say there's at least 3 bottom sixers that put them over the hump every year. Tampa, the third line was the reason they won those 2 cups. Washington, Devontae Smith-Pelly had 7 goals in the playoffs.
Like, Brett Connolly, former Blackhawks legend, had some goals. Lars Eller, who again they just got back, had the cup-winning goal.
Who's gonna be the Leafs' Brett Connolly? Who's going to be Dallas's Devontae Smith-Pelly? Who's going to be Carolina's Evgeny Kuznetsov? Looks like it's Marty Necas right now. Mm-hmm. But it's about these guys taking that next step. Potential. Yes. It's about these guys taking their next step. And it's going to be funny because if anything, the team that's showing me that they're going to do that is probably Dallas or Toronto, just because they're doing the same stuff they always do, but they're learning how to win a different way, which is something that Washington was doing in 2018, which I think replicated in the playoffs. And I think any player on that Washington team would tell you if they lose game 3 in Columbus, they don't win the cup. Plain and simple. Yeah. Plain and simple. It's a game of inches. It's a game of one bounce. It's a game of just one game can change your whole mentality. And clearly looking back on it, Game 7, 2017 did that for the Caps. So it'll be interesting to see who's the next team that can do that. Because for Colorado, it was definitely losing in Game 7 to Dallas. I'll tell you that much. For Tampa, it was not scoring a goal in the last 3 games against the Caps in 2018. And again, getting swept by the Blue Jackets. and that's another perfect example. If Tampa doesn't beat Columbus Game 1 in that 5 overtime game, I guarantee you they don't.
I don't think they win the cup. They probably win that series, but I don't think they win the cup.
They don't win the cup. And I'll keep it another buck. If the Caps don't beat the Penguins or get that monkey off their back, who's to say they do? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the year to do it for Toronto was last year. That's all I'm going to say. Probably would have lost to Florida anyway, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Dallas will have more chances. They built their team well, but
yeah, Dallas is just the example. Like they can win a cup now, and then they're set up to win a cup for like at least the next 5 years, half decade. We were so lucky with the Blackhawks because they'd really just caught lightning in a bottle between 2010 and 2015, winning 3 cups. And like really the only moment of doubt there was like, oh, if they don't get past Detroit, like Quenneville and Bowman might have both lost their jobs. And I can only think like them being down 3-1, like obviously Seabrook going over to Taves in the box. And it's like, we know what the results are with a lot of these teams, but you almost think like what's more curious to me is like what happened behind the scenes. Like, what are the players thinking? Like, what's happening with like the general manager and coach? Like, are they thinking like, oh, am I going to lose my job? And I feel like reading that story is like, we didn't know that, Washington or like Nick Backstrom wanted a trade request. We probably find out if the Capitals like lose again in the second round of the Penguins that year, but they won. So you don't hear that story. And I think it's always curious to hear the other end of it. Yeah, like the Blackhawks caught lightning in a bottle, won 2010 and 2015. The Penguins, even like they won their cup quickly with their core of Malkin and Crosby, but they shuffled things around. They added Phil Kessel. They've added a bunch of other guys. I mean, their HBK line won them the cup in 2016. Like they went 7 years without a cup, and they had some like brutal exits, like losing to the Flyers the way that they did, and then just getting curb stomped by the Bruins in the conference final. Closest I think we've ever gone to a Penguins Blackhawks Cup final. And then they blew a 3-1 series lead to the Rangers. I think they blew a 3-1 series lead to the Lightning in 2011. Like they had some brutal exits, and they just kept with their main core, like shuffled some pieces around, and then they go back to back. And like Tampa Bay first go to the cup final, they lose to the Blackhawks, I think like lost to the Penguins in the conference finals, then you miss the playoffs, come back, losing the conference finals. Just an all-time embarrassing sweep to the Blue Jackets, but you come back and win 2 cups in less than a calendar year. So, yeah, it's always interesting to look at the cup winning teams and see all the adversity to go through. Like it's hard to win it every year, but when you get so many kicks at the can and like you're almost 10 years into it, you don't even have like a cup final or even conference final to account for it, especially in the case of the Leafs. That's what's tough.
That's the tricky question. And this is why I bring it up with these 3 teams specifically, like you said, because are you going to be the Capitals or are you going to be the Sharks? And that's the cold reality of the NHL.
Yeah, the Sharks are probably like the number one example. The Cap are a best team, but never won, unfortunately, which sucks because they had some really good teams. They made it to the cup final. They made it to a conference final a couple times, but didn't get it done. Like simple but harsh, like
facts.
Facts. Now, even the Blues, to me with the Blues, their win is just so weird to me. Like
they don't get included in this.
They're
an enigma.
Yeah, that 2019 Blues rosters is 2022 Avs got done, and Vegas just finally said fuck it, like we're winning this year, and they just dominated their way to a
the goalie just said fuck it and left.
Yeah. I think that's it for the show today. I don't know. Do you got anything more else to add, or we can head off there? I thought that was a good thing to read off. I've been sitting on that for a while.
No, that was great. Besides that, that's really all I got. I was just looking through the point totals just to see if there's anyone that's surprising, but I think we went over Natchez and all that, which I think is the most surprising. Just want to check something real quick. Hold on. Yep, there we go. Cole Caulfield leads the league in goals with 12 goals and 1 assist. That's the funniest stat line I've ever seen.
Surely the Habs are doing well, though.
Yeah, they're so good, dude. Certainly Kirby Dach finally hit his stride after 5 years of being hurt. Oh, well. But, yeah, that's all I got. I just wanted to talk about Caulfield's stat line because I think it's funny.
Yeah, we could go on about other players, but I think that's a good way to end things off here. So yeah, thank you for tuning in, the listener. Give us a 5-star rating on your preferred podcast platform, whether that is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching our beautiful faces on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. Of course, like the videos. So yeah, for Pierce and Dylan, take it easy, y'all, and enjoy your Tuesday night. Peace out.
Tuesday, ain't it?
Tuesday, ain't it?